let me see who we are going next to. That is our panel discussion. And that is the panel discussion with the title Highway to Hell. Wow. Too bad we didn't have time to put on some music. Or can tech help real estate achieve ESG objectives? I see some panelists already coming on stage, so that is nice. Let me remove this pin. There we go. Is Lewis Martin also already online? Yes, he is. There is our moderator. Hi, how are you, Lewis?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Very good, very good.
Good.
Great to have you with us. You have, again, an amazing panel.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Me too. Would you like to introduce them? Then I go backstage, and if I have any questions on the end, I will come back.
Yeah, sure. Well, before I introduce them, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Lewis. I work for an organization called Charlton Morris. Charlton Morris is a global executive search and bespoke talent solutions advisory for a variety of industries, but I head up our smart buildings, PropTech and ESG practice. So as an organization, we deliver bespoke talent solutions and insight services to startups, as well as also conglomerates that specialize in either real estate services or technology vendors for the real estate industry. We're a global business, and yeah, that's about it. So Dalji, I'd love for you to go first to introduce yourselves, then we'll pass it on.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Daljit Sandhu, I'm COO and co-founder of a private credit platform. We're called Proceed Capital. We predominantly fund residential real estate in the UK in the construction phase. We're a pretty new startup ourselves. In the time that we've been lending in the last 2 years, we've done 1.25 billion. And I should say we're backed by Towerbrook, who are a transatlantic PE firm. They're a B Corp. We're looking to get our own B Corp certification currently. And we do a variety of things on the ESG front, aside from the B Corp, which is credit screening all our projects on ESG criteria, both at a borrower level and a asset level. We try to measure the social value created from our projects. And we also offer a green finance product to try and incentivize developers who are looking to build more sustainably.
Great stuff. Alistair?
Yeah, I'm Alistair Purdy. I'm ESG Implementation Manager at Federated Hermes, which is an investment house managing about £6 billion worth of property real estate within the UK. Federated Hermes is an international business owned from the US, and we have about $600 billion of assets and another 1.6 trillion under advisement on ESG. UK, we're looking at city centre redevelopment funds in Leeds, Birmingham. We're involved in the King's Cross development that happened in London. Manchester as well, we've done some work with Co-op, and we know running the NOMA development, but we've also got traditional standing assets, industrial assets, retail leisure parks, and big shopping centre in Milton Keynes.
Great stuff. Nick?
Hi, hi there, everybody. My name is Nick Schulman. I'm the CEO and founder at BlockDocs, and one of our products is called AreaView, which is a data insights platform for buildings, which helps landlords and tenants with energy and operational efficiency, as well as sustainable disclosure reporting.
Lovely. And finally, Adam?
Hi everyone, Adam, founder of Cleverly. Cleverly is a digital platform that allows real estate managers and facilities professionals to digitalize their portfolios. We use things such as sensors and workflow automation to improve operating efficiency and to facilitate the collection of data, which I think is where all of this starts.
Yeah, no, I agree. So the title "Highway to Hell" it was taken from an article Alistair actually shared very kindly from the UN Secretary General, "Highway to Climate Hell." naturally, from my perspective, we see technology and the adoption of technology playing a pivotal part in that. And I guess just to set the stage for everyone that's listening, so climate temperatures is projected to warm about 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. So from rising sea levels that sweep away coastal properties to heat waves that cause energy bills to spike, real estate assets face a diverse set of threats from climate change. However, while these physical risks from climate change are often well known to real estate investors, less appreciated are the challenges presented by the low carbon transition. So nearly 40% of global CO2 emissions come from the real estate sector, which I'm sure by now everyone is well aware of that stat. Of these emissions, around 70% are produced by building operations, and the remaining 30% coming from construction. So global and national climate goals demand sharp emissions reductions in both operations and construction, which can only be achieved through significant changes within the real estate sector. And yet, technology adoption has predominantly been a painful process across real estate to impact any of this. So hopefully over the next 45, 60 minutes, my guests will give you insight, and we'll be talking around topics including technology, sustainability, and ESG targets, and whether the real estate industry has the chance to meet these metrics. So with that opening statement, the first question, and I'll come to you, Adam, as I think it plays nicely into what you're doing. Why do you think technology and processes in buildings are so far behind to other industries when you compare?
I think more than anything, the speed with which real estate adopts new technologies is a function of the speed with which assets are replaced. I mean, as you say, 30% of the carbon emissions are embodied carbon, so are inherent within the asset themselves. And I think until you're looking to tear down and rebuild, and hopefully we'll go into this more at a later stage about how we can shift the linearity that is the current construction model into a more circular one. But if we just consider the fact that unless you're put in a position where you need to evaluate the current state of technology and you are constructing a new building, you don't really have much to do other than to retrofit your existing assets. That's not to say, given that there is 70% of these emissions are incurred during the operating phase, so it's the bigger of the two to target. But I think we're only now starting to see the impact that some of these new technologies can have, and that is partly a function of having the data to be able to analyze and put in place remedial actions which will reduce those emissions.
That's interesting. Nick, do you have anything to add on that? You're on mute, sorry.
I agree with Adam. I would also perhaps add that the impetus from the industry to do something is also much more recent. Several years ago, even if maybe the technology was available, there wasn't the will. But I think that has changed in recent times, and we'll discuss obviously later in the panel about that in a bit more depth. But I think that because of increasing regulation as well as reputational risk, that is increasing the adoption of technology into buildings.
Yeah, can I just say on that regulation point, the government in the UK has been quite slow historically to implement that regulation. So there hasn't been that sort of stick to drive the industry to adopt, higher ESG standards. And then there's market failure, because there has been market failure in certain segments of the market where occupiers were not demanding better ESG standards of their buildings. either as the asset owner or the occupier, whether you're commercial tenant or you're a buyer, a home buyer. So now that we're starting to see that demand from the occupier up, that's really driving the market. And obviously now the regulatory timeframes have been really clearly set out, and people have no choice but to adapt.
And on that point, actually, Daljeet, do you think the UK as a industry, our industry is more advanced than Europe or the US in general?
I think certainly more than some parts of Europe, but obviously everybody now has made their net zero pledges. So, you know, they all have their own timetables and targets to achieve that. And the UK was actually one of the first countries to write those into law and to make those commitments. So in that respect, we went further, faster, but obviously, you know, the details all in then how that gets implemented across industries. And we're just seeing that happen now.
Can I just also add one point, which I think is going to come up again through this discussion, but a lot of this is going to involve trade-offs and conflicting incentives. So as there is quite a concentration of ownership within the commercial real estate sector, at least, have people been incentivized to adopt these latest technologies? I would say not while, you know, energy costs have been low. And we can look at what's happened with Grenfell and the complications and time that it's taken to implement anything there, with lives at stake similarly, that imposing, you know, regulation on the private sector, on individuals and their homes is going to be very difficult. And until the costs come down to a point where there are some innovative revenue models, perhaps, which enable private and public sectors to apportion the costs and benefits perhaps more equally, then this is probably going to continue to be a asset class which is somewhat slow to move in the direction that I think it needs to go.
I mean, obviously there's another role, that governments can play as well as regulation, which is the stick. You know, they can also encourage innovation by giving tax breaks, putting out grants and first loss money for new technologies, which again, I think the government's been slow to do in the property sector. And you can see in other sectors like renewables with wind, for example, they really kickstarted that industry and kicked off the innovation in that industry and helped to bring costs down quite substantially with all the tax breaks that they implemented, but we haven't seen similar for real estate.
I also think as well, as you mentioned before, the regulations are currently EPC regulations don't look at real-time energy use. They're looking at a mythical target you can reach rather than actually looking real-time, which the public display certificates did, but were never adopted. So I think as we start to look at maybe some more additional certification rollout, and there's a move towards neighbours, it's used in Australia being rolled out in the UK, then that will force the industry to move, well, the assets to move forward to look at energy use intensity. I think equally as well, one of the main barriers is leasing events and how those fit into landlords actually being able to do stuff with the assets that they've got. On leases are particularly struck out, the green lease clauses are removed, but there may be some scope in there to do stuff, and as assets come available or voids become available, then deployment can happen. But again, that could be on a 10 to 15 year rolling program.
Okay, interesting. I love asking that question when I moderate a panel. Interesting answers. So I think if we break down ESG and talk about the importance of both E, S, and G and how that fits within. I know from my perspective, at least, sitting in quite a fortunate position, I get to see so many new technology companies coming into the space with different solutions for each component. Chucking it over to the panel, I mean, from an environmental standpoint, or some may say an energy standpoint, how can tech help achieve ESG goals? And I think that's probably best for Adam and Nick.
You want to start with this one, Nick?
Sure. So everybody's very focused on the E of the ESG and the energy side of things, and it's often overlooked that the requirements under S and G as well. For example, I mean, starting with G, you know, the good governance. So that starts at the top, and there are obligations for, you know, not just the directors of companies, but sustainability leaders in order to drive the climate agenda within their organizations. Then also under the S, that's also has impacts that we've seen recently, you know, during and post-pandemic amongst the well-being of staff. And then that begins to touch on the air quality within those buildings, as well as this this shift towards hybrid working and to more flexible working styles. And so, although, as I said, there's a lot of emphasis on the energy, and perhaps that's where because of regulation, there's a lot of focus. We shouldn't forget about the S and the G in the real estate industry either. Adam?
Yeah, I think the E and the E is the most measurable, I think, which is why it tends to get a lot of attention. And I do think that there are some really exciting technologies. You know, if we look at this from day dot of a real estate project, and you know, there's new materials, there's much lower carbon concrete being manufactured now, 70% lower emissions. There is greater consideration in the design of buildings for things like daylighting and adaptive spaces. You know, I think we're definitely at a point where we have real value add or impactful technologies that can be implemented. I think if we think about the sheer scale of the housing requirement, I've read that there is a requirement for a city the size of New York to be built every month for the next 40 years. Now, these are going to have huge impacts on society. And are they going to be dropped into existing communities and populated areas? Are they going to populate previously, you know, areas where people have not historically lived? You know, these are the sorts of things which need to be considered, and particularly balancing the impact that it's going to have on the existing and potential communities thereof. Then, as you say, the governance part of things is so important because we need smart regulation. At the end of the day, I think a lot of this building that takes place is going to be driven by government, and I want there to be a transparent and open recognition of the fact that cost should not be the only driver in how these projects are delivered.
Okay, interesting. Alistair, because of your background and working for an investment company as such, what are you seeing?
I think what Adam said, right, the E is the measurable bit, and therefore is the bit that's very easy to put quantitative around and to then normalize against asset value or against the net lettable area, and to get some real understanding of how those individual assets are moving. The S is much more difficult to measure, and even using something like social value portal, you're ascribing a fixed monetary value against purely just jobs and different assets. So there are moves in foot to look at wider impact an asset can have on the community around it in terms of the SDG goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, education, health, but that's quite difficult. And the granularity of data that's available to benchmark that against tends to be older data coming from censuses, at a sort of granular level from governments, rather than more up to date. So if you're trying to look at a yearly increase, it's difficult to measure that. And it's quite nebulous to try and get your head around what actually an asset can do. I mean, there's certain things you can put in, and one of the ones that I'm quite interested in is how the building can affect certainly with climate resilience. So you're looking at shading, public shading, or public availability to water, But how do you measure that again, and what metrics are you putting in place? And maybe that's something that technology can help us to measure in the long term, maybe not just through footfall, but also through other metrics as well. We haven't really thought of it. I mean, well-being that Nick mentioned, we had the first reset certification building in Europe for air quality, and that's becoming more important, especially in alpha office buildings. Blue chip tenants are looking for that, and I think that's equally becoming important as lockdown has come to an end, and trying to get staff to come back into offices to give them that well-being environment to inhabit.
Okay, anything to add there, Daljit?
I was just going to say, really generically, technology can really help. First of all, measure the problem, whether you're looking at a corporate level or at your individual assets. It can help to capture the data that can then inform what the problems are, and then, you know, monitor that. And as we've all just been describing, there needs to be some normalization of reporting and the metrics that we all use to report against our environmental targets and standards. So tech can help us to get to that measurement and standardization, and therefore a sort of uniformity in reporting and benchmarking. But yeah, obviously you see at an asset level, lots of new technology going into buildings themselves to make them smarter, to make them more occupier friendly, and to put in place those sensors and data capture points that sort of help to automate that process and give you live and consistent information.
Okay, and opening the floor, I mean, does it matter how the building or buildings are being used? Is that important?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the usage can have a real effect on the asset. You can have, from an industrial point of view, you can have two industrial units that look exactly the same, and we've got assets that have got document storage in where the energy use is completely negligible. Or equally, we can have a unit that's business-to-business sales with a screw fix, or even with a trampoline park in that looks exactly the same. So the actual use of the asset is something you need to bear in mind. The tenant occupation rate and type will have a dramatic impact on what's being done, whether that's manufacturing industry using water, even putting out pollution. So I mean, there's use of tech there to monitor the pollution that's coming out from those assets.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I would add, sorry, that was it.
No, go ahead.
It's just that, you know, we are moving forward in some areas, like, you know, grey water is still a really underutilized way of minimizing water consumption within buildings, for example, and yet it's a technology that has been around for a long time, perhaps forever, if you think about the fact that water was put to these sorts of uses since you know, Neolithic periods effectively. But you know, this is the same sort of thing that we could adapt to the built environment in terms of, okay, what use is that building going to have and what does it actually need? I think we have got a history, whether it's baked in safety or not, of over specifying, and there may be situations where we perhaps don't need to have levels of cooling, levels of heating, levels of lighting that have been spec'd for a building, and that would only be driven by what the building is actually to be used for.
Were you going to say something, Daljit?
Yeah, so I was just going to say the regulation is certainly asset and use specific. So if you're a landlord, you have to soon have a property that's rated at EPC or above, or you cannot rent out that property. If you're a commercial landlord, you've got, you know, different targets to meet. If you're a owner occupier in a house right now, there's not anything that you currently need to do, but by 2030, there can be no new gas boiler installation. So the regulation is very, very sort of usage specific as to whether you're owner occupier, commercial tenant, or a house owner.
So being able to distinguish properties, as Alistair's identified, based on the amount of their sort of like their energy profile and how they're actually used, has historically been very complex, but now there are technologies, including the ones that we've developed, which are breaking down those barriers and making that much more attainable. So that is a direction of travel for the industry, because the regulations and where things have come from are, as Alistair identified, could be comparing, a trampoline park in an industrial estate to an office building, and you're not really comparing like for like in those circumstances. So it creates a bit of a mockery of what everybody's putting a lot of effort into trying to achieve.
Well, I guess the same point that you're making there, Nick, stands for what are the ESG objectives. I appreciate for certain companies, it can mean different things. I mean, from your side, Alistair, what are you seeing from that standpoint?
Well, I mean, again, it comes down to that measurable. That's predominantly what we're measuring is the energy use intensity of assets, the scope 1, scope 2 emissions. I mean, our carbon net zero goal includes scope 3, so that's a large data collection exercise that we've got to go through stakeholder engagement. Water has come up as a usage. Certain investors are more interested in that. So again, the profile can differ from investor to investor and from consultants who the investors use. Predominantly the main ones are around net zero, because they've all got their own targets to reach and they've all made their own commitments. Equally, social value, I think, will come up, and we'll be seeing people will want to know what their investment is doing to the society it's investing in, whether it's having a positive impact or a negative impact. And I think one item we haven't really touched on is automation, and that's something that I think is going to be important in the future. We see a drive towards automation. We're seeing the deployment of robotics, and how does that affect society and lower paid jobs? It may well have an inverse effect on energy use, in that we've got to charge these things up, but equally it could have an effect where you haven't got to heat and light areas where you're now cleaning, because you're using robotic to fulfill that out of hours. And I think that's something that we need to probably be paying attention to as well as we look to introduce these solutions.
Okay. Anything else to add on that standpoint? Good. So the next question that would follow really is, I mean, there's so much noise within the space in the world at the moment with what's going on from a climate change standpoint. I'd love to get each of your views on, are we actually on track to meet these objectives or to achieve the objectives? Daljeet, do you want to go first?
Talking specifically about the housing market, which is what we specialize in, I think obviously there's been some great strides being made in terms of regulation around energy and carbon with MEES and with the Future Home Standard coming out in 2025. But equally, there's 19 million existing homes. So some of that regulation, the Future Homes, applies only to new build homes. But there's 19 million existing homes that will need some form of retrofit before the UK can hit its net zero target. So there doesn't appear to be a clear plan about what to do for that. So in that regard, no, not enough has been done yet.
Okay, well, we'll come on to that. Nick?
So the latest industry reaction, which I've been coming across, suggests that we aren't doing enough, and we're not moving ahead at the pace that we need to in order to meet those targets. And to be honest, it baffles me somewhat that as we said at the start of this panel, that 40% of carbon emissions come from this sector, and it can make such a big impact on climate change, but it is lagging behind in where it needs to be in order to lead the way.
Yeah, I think from an industry standpoint, we see it so clearly. But then when you look at the real estate, actually getting them to adopt the technology just seems to be, well, quite an uphill battle. Adam, Alistair, do you have anything else to share there?
I mean, I think it's difficult to condense the entirety of ESG into half an hour. So I think all of us are probably struggling a little bit in being concise, given the complexity of the issues at hand. But you know, can PropTech help? 100%, it can. Is there an opportunity for it to do so? I think so. I think generally that, you know, you just need to play into incentives or create incentives for people to act. I think there is generally a feeling that we'll be fine somehow, and faith is placed in a lot of other people doing the work, whether that's advances in science and technology or other people making sacrifices. So I do think that this is definitely a situation where people can't be complacent. We are not on a glide path at the moment by any means, and I hope that there are kind of not silver bullets, but ways in which we can speed up the reductions in emissions or the improvement from a societal context. But it's hope, and hope's not a strategy. So I think everyone needs to be pushed into taking real action.
I think as Adam said, I think we're probably striving towards it. I mean, capital value eventually will become linked to ESG, whether that's through MEES risk or through green certification or through well-being. Certainly, we're begin to see some of that in the Alpha office properties in London. That there is some drive towards quality on green certification of buildings, and whether that filters out eventually through the rest of the portfolio. Just as a commitment to 40% of global assets now have made a commitment to net zero. Obviously, there's 60% there that haven't, and you've got to wonder where those 60% are lying. But the 40% are early adopters and hopefully market leaders, and we'll be able to push that value forward. I mean, equally, there's some difference of opinion, certainly in the US on ESG. It's become a bit politicized as to what ESG is, but from our point of view, it's a good fiduciary duty to manage those assets on behalf of your pension holders and to reduce that risk. And climate is definitely a risk, whether that's through physical risk or through transition risk, and having assets you can't sell, or you've got to take a reduction in value on, or you're seeing a reduction in rents on, which is the long-term hold position. So I think I'm a bit more positive in that it will eventually happen. Hopefully the timing will be enough to see us through, but we've got to rely on bringing everyone else with us and showing the value that PropTech can add to those assets in not just meeting ESG goals, but also having a long-term capital value in terms of reduction of energy prices, reduction of energy use, which is important now. But equally, I think there's also issues with the grid system as well in the UK. We're all looking to electrify transportation and heating, and whether the grid can take that, and whether it can take PVs pumping out energy back into the grid at 4 o'clock on a July morning when no one's using energy, but the PVs are working. So there's a bit of infrastructure work that needs to be done, and it can't all be down to us landlords to pick up new distribution boxes in, which is going to come at additional cost to us when we're putting EV charging points into car parks.
Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, I think we also should remember that within the industry, there's a wide variety of properties in terms of their age and when they were built. And you know, as we've identified a few moments ago, newer properties are probably more energy efficient. But certainly in Europe, there's a lot of property, some of it quite ancient, and there are more challenges and complexities in trying to bring those properties up to the modern standards, and until that happens, they remain significant contributors to climate change.
Well, on that point, Nick, do you think technology could have a big impact on that, or would we need to go through a recommissioning process?
I don't think it's necessary to knock down and rebuild, and certainly some of those older properties, you know, are national treasures and should be protected anyway. So I think that technology is an enabler, and that as newer technology has come onto the market, there is still, you know, many opportunities provided to these buildings which they didn't have before. So not all buildings can have, for example, a building management system installed to manage how they operate, but you can get pretty close with retrofitting, you know, some you know, a variety of modern sensors.
Agreed. And just going back to your previous point, Daljeet, from your housing view, and I'm conscious of time. So if there's one item or one initiative that we can be doing to achieve these ESG objectives, I appreciate we could probably spend an hour on this topic alone, but what would your one be, or advised to be?
I guess a lot of it does link back to financing and then the end asset value. So, you know, we as the private industry need to kind of step in and come up with our own solutions to our own problems. So, you know, we as a lender need to do what we can to incentivize our borrowers to build more sustainably. If you're a mortgage lender, you know, there's the sort of advent of green mortgages to incentivize homeowners to retrofit their homes and to give them the finance to do that, you know, which can cost up to £20,000 per home. So yeah, being a financier, I'd say that, you know, the advent of green loans, sustainability linked loans, and other types of finance instruments are really key to helping the whole industry upgrade in this way.
Nick, Adam, Alistair, do you have one component that the industry could do to potentially get on track?
Other than coming back to data, it's always there, and being able to collect data. I mean, we have obviously long-term landlords, so we have tenants that have full control over their properties, and being able to get hold of that data, which is quite difficult. But I think eventually, it's coming that there's a freedom to share that data, and I think maybe that's the thing, is having that ability to share data without any unintended consequences of them seeing, to know why do you want it, and what's in it for me. And maybe that's a cross-pollination we can share by having smart tech that enables us to give them some insights into how the data, how they're using their asset, their building.
Okay, great. Well, it's not all necessarily doom and gloom. I mean, from my standpoint, again, as I said before, there is a lot of technology now coming through, which is having or will have significant impact on different areas when we look to achieve our ESG objectives. It'd be good to get your thoughts as a panel on what trends, whether it be tech or other items that you're seeing that is having that impact. Nick or Adam, would you like to go first?
Well, I think that there are two drivers. Obviously, we work on the principle that you can't mitigate what you're not measuring, and the ability to measure data in buildings now is beyond what it has ever been before. The sensors that are available are of a broader scope and lower cost than they have been, and of course are much easier to install. So the ability to actually acquire the data is there, and alongside that, the industry is doing a lot to lead the way in spite of basically government regulation. And Alistair's already mentioned, for example, Reset, which is an organisation particularly focused on air quality and well-being within buildings. But that's not the only one. There are others such as Well and Lead and BREEAM, of course. So these sort of industry self-regulation, in a sense, is also setting a pathway and driving the industry forward towards the adoption of technology as an enabler to achieve the goal, because technology in itself is not the end. It's just the means to an end, and we all understand what the objective is.
Yeah, I think one of the big benefits that the real estate industry has is its sheer scale and size and the value attached to it. If we think 300 trillion plus as an asset class, if you can get something which can have a quantifiable and realizable impact, and you roll it out across that, you don't need to be changing things by 10x as you may in the technology world. But I think we are starting to see, to that end, some use of data. So there's a university in Zurich which is using Google Street View images to be able to identify repurposable windows, and that's sounds basic, sounds perhaps a bit dull. Sure, it's not. I'm sure the technology is extremely impressive, but at the end of the day, as we've all said, it starts with data. If you know where things are, and if you know that a building is coming down, and you know that the party B can have use of various components that are already in existence and don't require remanufacturing, and you can incorporate all the things like cost of technology, program duration, et cetera, the sheer computational kind of basics that AI and ML is so good at. This is where we're going to start to see real value being generated and real impact being had.
Okay, great. Last couple of questions from my side. I think it would be good for the audience to get a better understanding as to how each of your businesses are making an impact from this standpoint. Dalji, would you like to go first?
Yeah, so I think for us, I mentioned two things earlier. One is a green loan product, and the second is measuring social value, which Alistair touched on. We do via the social value portal as one digital tool that is available on the market and quite widely adopted, albeit it does have its own issues around how the methodology works. But yeah, we obviously screen all our projects, whether they're green or not, from a credit risk perspective against climate risk and then transition risk for future regulation. We unfortunately don't have a digital tool for that, so I would love to have that digitized. We developed a framework and a point scoring system. But at the moment, as far as I'm aware, each lender has their own sort of bespoke methodology for doing that. So that, again, there's no sort of industry-wide standard for doing that, and therefore no industry-wide tool that's available to do that. But I imagine as the green finance market evolves and matures, that should emerge. So yeah, and then there's the social value portal, as I've just mentioned. But I'd love to, on the governance side, which as someone mentioned earlier, does tend to get a bit forgotten. There's a lot more focus on operational resiliency as well. So there's obviously tools you can implement there to manage and measure risk in your business. There's obviously cyber risk, which is heavily digitized. So in some respects, from an operational perspective, implementing PropTech solutions is just a wider trend that every business is going through, with some form of digital transformation at a corporate level for efficiency, for better risk resiliency, for cost savings. And PropTech implementation obviously just goes alongside that wider digitization trend.
Alistair?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly sort of back up that. The PropTech is is a valuable tool, needs to be part of that toolkit and needs to be accepted by properties that we just can't manage without it. And it's part of the building is becoming its nervous system, making it smarter so that it can operate on its own and flag up issues that the resources that we've got cannot be deployed in just collecting meter readings. They need to be an automated system that flags an issue. We don't need to know about a water leak 6 months, happened 6 months ago. We need to know about it the next hour when it starts. So we can, one, we can stop that water being used, and two, we can prevent any damage. So that's important to us. And I think as we deploy and refurbish these assets, the PropTech is being inserted in them to make them work, whether that's through having good, strong Wi-Fi connection within the assets, and again, scoring that on the wired score certification scheme, and also having the continual monitoring available to us of social well-being criteria and also energy use, because that's the only way we're going to drive these assets to become greener and fulfill their carbon net zero potentials. And that applies to all ages, and being able to retrofit that into older buildings. I mean, we've got buildings dating from 1800s all the way through to modern glass built buildings, but the buildings are going to be with us. We're not going to pull everything down by 2050 and replace it. So we need to be able to make these solutions. And the same with taking analog data and transferring it into digital, so we can read that as well. These are all going to be important. And managing out the human element, people going out with clipboards and making meter readings, they all make mistakes, but decimal point in the wrong place, and it either looks fantastically well or absolutely awful. But when you come to actually look at the data, it's fine, and they just put the decimal point in the right place. So being able to manage that out through the use of PropTech is extremely important.
So at BlockDocs, we've had our climate impact independently validated and certified to show that we can help our customers save over 1 million tons of CO2, and we often do that by helping them with a demand-led strategy, so that the services in the building are only provided at times and in spaces when they're actually being used, and that has obviously the most immediate impact. And then we look at more additional cases where they can get benefits.
And for us, we provide digitalization of assets through their operating phase. So that can mean booking desks or meeting rooms and prioritizing that based on minimizing floor occupancy and therefore energy demand. It can be natively integrating with sensors to ensure that energy delivery is only to places that are being utilized at any point in time. And it can be through integrating with third parties like Nix, whereby the AI and ML algorithms are run over existing data sets to ensure that energy demand is optimized. For us, our objective is having the space respond to its usage. So that may mean additional or reduced cleaning. That may mean refurbishment of existing assets, or it may be increased servicing of M&E equipment or reduced servicing, but it's optimizing that and reducing therefore the impact by collecting the data and ensuring that it's routed to the right people at the right time.
Great stuff. Final question from my side, and then I'll pass it over to the group. If we zoom out, this topic ties into everything that's being discussed, or most things being discussed at COP27. From my perspective, COP26 was all about the strategy, and I hope COP27 is about the implementation. From your side as a panel, is it working? Are we heading in the right direction?
I think the surprising thing about COP27 compared to COP26 is the decreased attendance from the built environment in Egypt, and it's unclear, why that was. I don't think it was because of a lack of commitment, but unless people turn up, obviously you wonder how progress can be made. I also think the government could do more to lead the way. Government have a lot of buildings, and certainly in the UK with hybrid working amongst civil servants, a lot of those buildings are not being used to their full capacity, and one often also wonders therefore about the energy consumption in those buildings. But there's a huge government portfolio, and the government should lead by example in demonstrating, because of the in the UK obviously we organise COP26, but I think that the speed to which government buildings become energy efficient is too slow.
Adam?
I think there has been a noticeable shift in acknowledgement of the severity of the situation between 26 and 27. And I think that there is a lot of recognition that it's complicated. And again, I do think that we should be looking at the S&G part as well, because I think they're just as important and are actually going to become increasingly important. I mean, to Alistair's point about automation, I think that is going to have huge impact, as is AI ML. And I think these are things which need to be very, very carefully considered. I think people are being pushed more and more to be transparent and acknowledge where they do have environmental impact. I think we're in a transitional phase where there are still, complexities and nuances, such as, I think Exxon is in, some of the environmental stock portfolios, and there's obviously an argument to say that they should be explicitly excluded. But, these are part of the learning that we're going through at the moment. And I think that I'm really heartened by, the fact that we're having these discussions today. And I think that that's sort of still grassroots, but the more it happens and the more this gets on everyone's radar and these conversations are had around other tables and places where these decisions are made, the better.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is the fact that it highlights in people's minds what's going on. I mean, I don't know if anyone remembers COP15 or COP13 or those early ones, but COP26, COP27 seem to have garnered a lot of attention. And whether that's will be seen from future employees coming through and stakeholders like tenants becoming involved and wanting to know what we're doing, then that all adds to that pressure to move real estate forward. But again, it's about implementation now. We've had enough of making promises. It's showing we can actually do something and doing it.
Yeah, I do worry with COP27. There was a lack of attendance, obviously, from listed companies, some very large international asset managers like Blackstone, who've previously made a lot of noise around ESG. So I think there is a danger as we enter a recessionary environment across the Western world, and everybody's got other challenges with regards to real estate. So that's obviously inflation, supply chain disruption, just general site viability. That there is a danger that the focus goes off ESG, and people are just more focused on more fundamental business issues, whereas obviously what we should be doing is doubling down on those ESG commitments and implementation, so that we get a better recovery and we can come out the other side, you know, with a green recovery.
Yeah, no, I agree. So to conclude then, I mean, high level, are we as a panel, are we feeling confident in where the industry is going? Naturally, it needs more work and from every stakeholder, but is there hope?
Yeah, I think so. I think as the early adopters move forward, maybe I'm trying to sound too positive, but as the early adopters move
I'm
forward, the rest of
trying
the
to wrap it
market,
up positively.
yeah, the market will catch up. And I think it's down, the onus is on us to keep going and to keep striving to move that needle, and to make certain assets that become available are showing good value through the fact they've got PropTech included in there and showing what it can do, and the value it's brought to the asset before as it comes to market. And equally, as we're looking to buy assets, realising that if it's got this stuff involved in it already, there is an added value to it.
Yeah, I think ultimately, you know, if something enhances returns, reduces risk, increases resilience, then of course it's a no-brainer. So the more that data emerges, the more adoption there'll be.
I don't think any of us would be here if we felt everything was as it should be and we were golden. But I do think that I'm cautiously optimistic. I would say I think the capacity is there within us, intellectual and financial, and now it just needs to be put to the appropriate ends.
I think there's lots to be positive about, and we've seen that the drive towards net zero is really taken hold in a lot of organizations, and that's also filtered down into you know, staff and customers as well. So there is an increased focus on what the end goal is, and the lack of time that we have in order to get there. And I think that is you know, a hugely positive step forward. And people are pulling in the same direction towards that goal, though sometimes taking different roads to get there.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, brilliant. Well, there's a couple of questions in there, but I'll pass it over.
Yeah, thank you, Lewis, and thank you all panelists. I had also a question for you, but that was maybe like also the last question from Lewis. So is this like the highway to hell, or is this the highway to a bright future? But I guess you all say it's a highway to a bright future, but we don't have that song yet. So I only have the highway to hell for you guys.
Well, hopefully we can turn around.
We need to make a new song, I guess, as real estate people.
Yeah.
A new AC/DC. Who's going up as that?
I've got a tie, not quite the schoolboy uniform, but I'll go.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, all, and hope to see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lewis.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.